The Dutchman. He showed me his favorite YouTube video. It was nothing special. I showed him mine. He said, "Are you serious?" I felt nothing but a longing to feel something. I shouldn't have brought him up on the roof if I didn't want him to kiss me. High ground invites it. Kissing him was no kind of revelation. It was simply a fact that we were kissing, just as a moment ago it had been a fact that we were sitting on the roof. I stated another fact, which was that I had no particular desire to have sex with him. He was very quiet and practiced the martial arts. "I'm wondering," I said quietly, "if I need to know why." Earlier in the evening, he had said that from now on in his life, he was only going to do what was necessary. I didn't know how to explain that sex with him did not seem necessary. I said we could make out a little, though. As we made out, the ambiance of the roof began to supersede my ambivalence. I had made out with lots of guys on this roof, but never had sex on it. How had I neglected this? I was moving out in a week. This was very likely my last crack at the roof. He had shown me a picture of one of his paintings in his phone. It was a very small picture, but the painting looked pretty good. I put it all together: the roof, the view, the late spring night, the half-decent painting. Sex, I believed, pushed a button in the universe. Whenever I thought this, crass jokes always came to me about where exactly in the universe this button might be located. If I went too long without sex, I became mildly suicidal. If I had bad or mediocre sex, I became suicidal in a different way. If I had amazing sex, I became suicidal in yet a different way. There was a very narrow category of sexual experiences that left me with the will to live. I would never act on these suicidal ideations. I also loved life, and it would truly kill my parents. All they wanted was for me to be happy. They didn't care if I became a doctor or a lawyer or believed in Jesus or married a Jew, some of the conditions under which other people's parents withheld their love or money until such conditions were met, dooming their children to lifetimes of quiet desperation or mild to moderate misery. My parents had worked so hard not to fuck me up so badly that I could never be happy. And they hadn't. The possibility still existed for me to be happy, though I was often mildly suicidal about things having to do with sex and art, and mildly miserable due to lack of love or money. But this was not their fault. The fact that I was alive was their fault, and even that had to do with sex. And now all I had to do was try to be happy, or at least not suicidal. And sex had to do with this, too. I had already decided to leave New York to pursue greater happiness. I had come to the definitive revelation that I needed to leave New York on this very roof almost 9 months before, on my 30th birthday. It was a wonderful party. Everyone came. I got emotional during the cake. I opened my presents and ate a handful of mushrooms. Soon after we ate the mushrooms, but before they really kicked in, the last of the guests went home. The apartment was strewn with empty champagne bottles. It was raining like the night I was born. I wanted to be outside, so I brought all my tarps and sleeping bags up to the roof and slept there for a few hours till the rain soaked through. When I woke up, I was still tripping. I went back downstairs. Now the apartment was strewn with empty champagne bottles and wet camping gear. I got into my warm, soft bed with my computer. "I must leave New York," I typed. I opened myself to whatever comes. I fell back to sleep, cradling the machine in my arms. Now it was 9 months later, time to give birth to the idea I had conceived immaculately alone in my bed. I had somehow saved enough money to make a go of it out there. He was here. He was Dutch. He would do. He produced a condom. Had I really wanted to have sex with him, I would have been flattered, but I was annoyed. He hadn't even bought me dinner. We had gone Dutch. Was this because he was Dutch? He had described himself at one point as a Dutchman. This I liked. His accent was very faint. He was also Asian or maybe half Asian, very handsome, soft-spoken, piercing stare. This I also liked. I was starting to like him right up until the moment we kissed, but he didn't kiss well. He had a daughter, a baby he'd had with another European. It seemed impossible that such a bad kisser could ever impregnate someone. I liked when he spoke about his daughter. "She's a tyrant," he said. There was something novel about sleeping with a man who had fathered a child when I myself had never mothered one. It made me feel young and old all at once. It was a warmish night. He had a softish sweater. Underneath the sweater was skin. It seemed wrong to profane my body and soul with the mediocre sex we were sure to have, but equally wrong to profane my body and soul by leaving it untouched on this warm spring night, one of my last in New York, up here on the roof with the view. It was so complicated and yet so simple. Sometimes the button in the universe needed pushing. It was a reasonable approximation of sex the way the photograph in his cell phone had been a reasonable approximation of a painting. Doing it on the roof was something. I had been right about that. There were all the lights and sounds. I had never been naked outdoors in the city before. Sex in the city, I thought. It was an experience I was having. It was the name of a television show. I was leaving New York before I could live it. I was afraid of becoming a cliche. But there was nothing cliche about having sex with a soft-spoken Dutch painter, martial arts practitioner, and father of a tyrannical toddler on the roof. I maneuvered myself so I could look out at the city. I was far more interested in the view than in my sexual partner. I felt like I was having goodbye sex with New York. He complained that the roof was hard on his knees. I got on top. He complained that the roof was cold under his back. I got annoyed. I had had much better sex in far more uncomfortable places. He asked if we could go inside. I realized that it would have been perfectly fine with me if we didn't go inside, if he left right then, if I climbed into my warm, soft bed alone or with my computer, now that I had had sex on the roof. But we went inside and finished. Or rather, one of us did. I had never had sex with anyone less concerned with or even remotely aware of the mechanics of the female orgasm. Just what kind of a European was he? Then he did something even more infuriating. He put his shorts and t-shirt back on. I abhor people who don't sleep naked, especially after sex. Unless pajamas are being worn to prevent hypothermia under extreme weather conditions, they are a sure sign of sexual repression and generalized anhedonia. I walked naked into the kitchen and poured myself a drink. Something wonderful had happened. I was now completely ready to leave New York. The next morning, I woke up full of energy. I jumped out of bed and started the coffee. He didn't want any. He got dressed to leave. We kissed politely. He was hauling around an enormous suitcase, for some reason having to do with his maneuverings between sublets. I cheerfully heaved it across the threshold as if it weighed nothing. "Happy travels," I said. I felt a little bad, like I had disrespected the roof. I thought of all the different people I had kissed on the roof over the years. None of them were any of my favorites. My best times on the roof had been smoking joints and drinking cocktails with my friends. Maybe it was a friend roof, not a sex roof. Maybe I had misunderstood the roof. Maybe I had misunderstood sex. Maybe I had misunderstood New York. California, I thought. Now there was a place where people knew how to do it properly in the out of doors. A place where people knew how to live. I started packing that very morning.